Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping, and I'll be your host once again for this week's episode. Joining me on the show this week is Jamie Holmes. I met Jamie at the Apromicon class that I hosted here in Minnesota back in June. Super awesome guy, very intelligent. He's actually the admin or one of the admins for the Facebook page now, so you've probably seen some of his posts. We're going to chat about a whole bunch of different things. He's going to share with us his journey through the automotive world, through being a tech and business ownership and mobile diagnostics and programming and a whole lot of other stuff as well. We're also going to talk about why we love doing what we're doing so much and why that's important to someone, no matter what job you're in. You know, that it is important to love what you're doing. And if you're not, well, find something else, right? You should at the very least, not hate your job, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Anyways, I really enjoyed this talk, Jamie. Great guy. Hopefully you'll enjoy it as well. Oh, and one more note. The audio quality of this one wasn't the greatest, and I'm not exactly sure what happened, if it was internet connection or the software that I use to do the recording, but it turned out to be not so great, so I apologize about that. Hey, if you want to be the audio guy for the podcast, shoot me a message. I'll probably hire you because I always seem to be fighting it in one way or another. Anyways, with that all out of the way, let's jump into the episode.
But as I said, you know, whenever I was, you know, talking to young people or a young audience or whatever the case is, and specifically talking about trade specifically, not just motive power, I always said that, you know, and I can even say this today, you know, even 43 years later, I can say I have never ever woken up and not wanted to go to work. You know, even in the deepest, darkest days in the early 90s when we were in a recession and business was crap, you know, and in order to keep the shop running, I had snowplow contracts and I'd be out to 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning plowing snow, you know, just to keep the cash flowing so we could keep the doors open. Mm-hmm. Even then, you know, with 2 and 3 and 4 hours sleep, I always wanted to go to work. It was because it's like you had said before when we were talking, it's a decision. It's something you wanted to do. It's what you like to do. And man, how lucky are we to be able to do something that we like to do? Yes. I couldn't imagine, you know, like you know, and I'm sure you have friends too. And I've had friends who've said, "Oh man, I hate my job."
Yeah.
Hey, why don't you quit? Like find something you like to do. Because I mean, I could not imagine having to work for as long as you have to work in this lifetime and do something that you didn't like.
Yeah. Absolutely, it's depressing to think that the amount of time that you work. I mean, even if it is just 40 hours a week, like that alone is such a huge chunk of your life over your entire adult or your working career, and to do something that you're not interested in, something that maybe you hate the people you work with, and you just despise getting up in the morning and going there. That definitely does. I'm so happy that I don't have to do that.
Yeah. Me too. I mean, you know, there's a line from the song, you know, that I forget. It's really irrelevant, but it kind of goes like, you know, getting up at 6 a.m., you know, washing down, you know, a stale donut with a cup of coffee, and driving an hour and a half to spend the day in a room full of jerks. You know what I mean? I think, but that's what some people live.
Yeah,
you know, that's what they do, and you know, and despite the you know the frustrations that this career can bring, and despite you know not to hurt feelings, but sometimes we certainly don't get the respect that we deserve. But I mean, that's all part of it. I mean, you get to the point where it's all of a sudden it's water off the duck's back. But you think that, but even still, you still like doing what you're doing. Like you can push all that stuff aside, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really like it. It's like, well, I used to always say, you better find something that you like to do, because you're going to actually spend more time with those people than in some cases you're going to spend with your family.
Yeah. And that goes with like shop culture and the place that you're working in, you're seeing those people. If you're at a place working 50, 60 hours a week, more than you're seeing your wife and kids potentially. And so, again, if you absolutely despise the people that you're working with, definitely make a change. There's so many options right now for it. So you've been doing this for a long time. What would you say you love the most about automotive? What is it? How would you define what keeps you coming back every day and wanting to do it?
Well, you know what? A friend of mine actually, and like a young guy like you, who's a really great tech and really, really, really smart guy. He really kind of nailed it for me some time ago. And I always kind of knew this in the background, but I get such a kick out of solving a problem and fixing something. You know what I mean? Like that's what does it for me. I get the little high from figuring something out, or all of a sudden it's fixed, or whatever the case is, and it's sorted out, and I mean, for me, you end up taking on just bigger and bigger things as time goes along to try and you're like a junkie, you're
chasing that dragon.
yeah, exactly. You're always chasing the dragon. I'll give you an example. Like, I'm semi-retired. Okay. I sold my business 3 years ago. My business partner, unfortunately, his health wasn't as good as mine, and our partnership agreement was such that if something happened to one of us and we had to sell, then the other one had to sell too. That was just part of the deal. I had another 5 years in me. He was done, unfortunately, at that point.
Okay.
But in any event, so I retired for about 3 months, and I kind of went, I'm not ready. This retirement thing's not working for me. So I started getting back in. So because of my business and the way that it worked, and we can talk about that later, but I had such I had a non-compete that was probably 15 pages long about what I couldn't do.
Okay.
So I couldn't get back into the automotive business. I was forbidden, really, and I understand why. So what I did is I helped a friend of mine with his generator business. He's a Cummins own dealer here in Ontario, and so I went to work and help him.
Okay.
And that was kind of cool because it's pretty similar to automotive. They use a lot of automotive engines and stuff like that. And he liked my experience because he's a diesel tech. So if it had points and condensers, he's lost.
Okay.
Right? So I cut my teeth on that stuff. So it's pretty gravy. So I helped him out for a while, and I did that for about 2.5 years. And then, we talked about this earlier about, then came, the second winter of working, and I went, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. This really sucks. I was out a day and I had like 3 calls to do, and it was minus 40 and the wind's howling, and I'm going, no, I'm too old for this. This is not what I want to do. So, we came to an agreement, and I still do calls for him. I do bits and pieces, but then I thought, what am I going to do? So I started doing some machine work because I'm, my hobby, believe it or not, is cars. And I'm in really antique stuff. So most of my stuff is pre-1915.
Yeah, so I saw that Cadillac that you posted some pictures of in the Facebook.
Oh, yeah, the 11.
That's
I'm still
cool.
working away at that one. Yeah, I'm getting there, nibbling away at it, bit and piece. But I started making replacement carburetor needles with Viton rubber tips on them. Because what happens is a lot of these things, they're brass on brass, or they're steel on brass, and they wear, and they're unobtainium. You can't get them. So, but I found buying raw Viton and making the tips for the needles would make them seat, because flooded carburetors are a huge issue with antique cars, and fires are, of course, always a big issue too. So I would get into that. I was doing that for a little bit. Then I started doing some machine work for people. Then I did some, made some, bits and pieces of custom brackets for the Nissan, the G35 world. A guy got brought me brackets that didn't work, and I fixed them, and then took them to a CNC company and got them manufacturers, and we sold like 60 or 70 sets of those things. And right now, you talk about trying to get bigger high. I've got sitting on my bench an Audi R8 motor that came to me in 5 boxes. A friend of mine who's a rotary tuner who doesn't work on piston engines that are all tall. I mean, all he works is, well, I call them Doritos. All he works on rotaries, right? So he's never done anything like this before. So he had to take this job on, and the guy took it apart. Then he quit.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So he said, "Hey, listen, would you do the bottom end for me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I've got it sitting, and that's where that post came from. I was working on stuff for my car, because I'm waiting for a couple of parts for this V10. And I was kind of looking at the 2 parts, and I'm going, yeah, there's a lot of differences, but what? And I've always said that's kind of my coined saying when people say, "Oh, well, what are you working on that for?" Hey, man, they're all nuts and bolts.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a Bentley turbo wire in here a couple of months ago, with a fuel system issue.
Uh-huh.
It was a Gaugetronic mechanical fuel injection system. Once again, they came out in '79, the year that I started, so I know them really well.
Okay.
But I have probably half a dozen Ferrari clients that I do work for them. And most of the Ferrari stuff I work on is late 50s right through to the mid 70s. That's most of my clients. That's where they come from. A lot of the V12 stuff, and once again, points and carburetors, that kind of stuff is second nature to me. I've got a distributor machine. I do a lot of distributor rebuilding and other just bits and pieces. So, but that's not enough to kind of keep me busy, right? I mean, I get projects in, I put them out, I turn them around and get them back out.
Uh-huh.
So I get into the mobile diag stuff, right? Because, all right, so, well, maybe I should back up a little bit. So I get into the trading in '79. And I was really lucky because I had an electronics background. I've been a ham since I was 15. So electronics and electricity is second nature to me. It's like a lot of stuff for other guys, right?
Uh-huh.
So I was, and I'm not a big guy. I'm only 5'4", and back then I was like 5'4", and I weighed 110 pounds. So I wasn't made for slugging and hammering kingpins and slugging tires and all that kind of stuff. So, and I worked in a shop that was flat rate. So, and being the junior apprentice, and because of the electrical stuff in my other background, I did the tune-up stuff, the electrical, the air conditioning, the carb overhauls, all that kind of stuff anyway. And then I had a part-time job at night, working for an AC Delco shop doing carburetors for them. So, I get into the drivability, and because of the AC Delco connection, I got a lot of experience because, in '80, the first feedback carburetor came out with a PCM.
Okay.
Right. So the first Delco PCMs came out in '79 and '80. That's when they were introduced. So I was really lucky because I get in kind of on the ground floor of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I took a ton of training through AC Delco and took some other training, through Ford. And so whatever was offered, I took because I was, I wanted to absorb as much as I possibly could. So anyway, that went on for a while. And then in 1986, myself and the 2 business partners, the 2 guys that I worked for in that shop, came to me and they wanted to start their own franchise because they owned a franchise and they weren't really impressed with how it was run and they thought they could do better. So they came to me and said, "Hey, we're thinking about opening our first location. Why don't you open the first location?" And so I put up my car, my '64 Chevelle convertible, and my toolbox, and I borrowed 15 grand, and we bought a business and opened the first shop.
Nice.
And then
And where in
Go ahead.
Canada is that? You said Ontario?
Yeah, Southern Ontario. That was in Mississauga, which is just outside of Toronto.
Oh,
It's
gotcha.
kind of a suburb over from Toronto, if you will.
Okay.
So we opened that shop in 1986, and my then girlfriend and I, we weren't even married at the time, and we opened that shop, and I had that shop for 22 years, and then I kind of helped in the background. I wasn't one of the principal owners, but I helped in the background and with the franchise and my two other partners and so on, and bought them out. Eventually opened a second shop. I actually opened the first shop and the 30th shop in the chain.
Okay.
And then I sold the second shop, and then the oldest business partner, the second partner had been gone for quite some time by then, decided to go do something else. But the second business partner, the older one, wanted to retire. So he came to me and said, hey, as we had a deal from day one that said I had first right of refusal to buy the business. And he said, you've got about 18 to 24 months if you want to buy this thing. Why don't you come work at head office? Because I want to take 14 to 16 weeks holiday a year. You can see how it runs. Check out this side of it. And so I did. And he, after a while, decided that he wasn't quite ready to sell. So it took about 4 years for it to happen, which was fine. And then so I went out and got another business partner, and who's an accountant, who's also a car guy. And we ended up, after some protracted negotiation, ended up buying Master Mechanic, had 36 locations at the time. And then we took it, owned it for almost 16 years, and increased the sales by about 30%. And we closed some stores, opened some stores, and by the time we sold, we were at 39 solid locations.
Wow.
We had sales so we had sales of just over $36 million a year.
That's
so
awesome.
I mean that's franchise-wide sales across the 39 locations.
Yeah.
So, but it was quite a change, going from, running a shop and running, just a single garage to ending up with, 39 locations, 260 employees, 39 customers, because, my franchisees were my customers. They're the ones that I had to keep happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked after the day-to-day operation of the shops, and my business partner looked after everything else.
Okay.
He looked after the stuff in the office. He looked after the leases and dealing with landlords and all that all things. And being an accountant, he was pretty good with money, as one might imagine. And that's what I always told him. I said, hey, listen, let's. It's cool. You make the money decisions, because every penny you save, half of it's mine. I was really lucky with him, because I couldn't do his job and he couldn't do my job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, while we would occasionally ask the odd question, if he said, this is what I suggest we do here, yeah, no problem. And when it came to the stores, if I said, this is what needs to be done here, he'd go, yeah, okay. So it was good. I mean, in the 15 years, we really never had a crossword between us. We would occasionally piss each other off.
Sure. Yeah.
And so on. But that's just the nature of it, right? So anyway, but going back, somebody posted, actually, I'm not sure whether it was on the podcast page, or there was another page that a bunch of people that you and I both kind of have gotten to know. People are talking about running their own businesses and how hard it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough. I used to say to my franchisees, guys get frustrated and they want to throw in the towel and say, I can't do this anymore, whatever the case is. And I said, what you need to do is walk away for a little bit. You just back up. You need to back off a little bit. And then you've got to just kind of reevaluate, take a deep breath, step back, and then go back at it with a renewed attitude. If it was easy, everybody do it. Right?
Yeah.
Is what it comes down to. The problem is today, it's so hard because people expect instant response and instant communication, right? They expect, I sent you an email, I sent you a text.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that's good, but I've already got 18 ahead of you. You know, and it's only 10 o'clock in the morning, right? You know what it's like. I mean, I'm pretty lucky. My business right now, I mean, for us right now, it's snow tire season. I'm sure you guys have the same thing.
Oh,
So
yeah.
all the shops around here are slammed.
Yep.
So nobody's taking on anything that's going to take them more than 45 minutes to an hour to do. You know, if you're, you know, you have the same thing. If your car isn't running right, man, we'll get to that in January.
Yeah, exactly. After Christmas.
I mean, so I got a little bit of rest on right now, so it's not too bad. I'm still doing stuff. So, but going back to the business, you know, you really have to. You've got to be able to take a little different look at things sometimes, and I realized a long time ago that I can't please everybody. I can't be everybody's friend. And at the end of the day, you know, I'm running a business and it's my responsibility. I mean, you know, with you have a responsibility to yourself. You've got a responsibility for the bills you pay. You've got a responsibility to your household. Whatever the case is, the money you bring in, you got to maximize and do what you can while trying to be a fair and ethical guy. Right. And that's, you know, everybody says, oh, that's got to be easy. You just always do the right thing. Well, you try to always do the right thing. But sometimes, you know, you try to do the right thing and all of a sudden it comes off the rails real quick, you know, and whatever. I mean, you know, give you an example. So the other day I got a call from a shop that I've been into a couple times, you know, really sharp guys. You know, they got like 6 techs, good looking shop, lots of business. And the guy calls me and says, hey, we got a problem here. We got this Dodge truck. Looks like we got a problem with our Cardac M. Keeps coming back with a software issue. We think that the J boxes, something's wrong with it. DrewTech says something's wrong with the box. Can you come down and program this Dodge for us? Yeah, sure, no problem. So, I mean, these days with us, with the exchange and everything, you know, it's $120 US, but that works out to like almost $190 Canadian right now with the exchange and the bank fees, right? So we're getting killed up here on that. So, you know, I charge my flat $150. You know, that's what I charge to flash. So you put that, so there you're at $250 plus a little bit of truck. Like we're over $300 to flash a Chrysler. You know, and it's a TCM, so the truck doesn't move. The guy says, yeah, that's cool, no problem, come on down. So I get to the shop and I said to the guy, you know what? I said, listen, you've already eaten the 3 subs. You know, you're out of pocket almost $200. Why don't we take my J box, see if you can register it on your laptop and program the truck. You know, let me see if I can help you, right? You know, the way I look at it and the saying that I use with shops is, hey, the shop, you and me, we're on the same side of the table. It's the customer that's on the other side of the table, right?
Yeah, those assholes.
So at the end of the day, so anyway, bottom line is we ended up hooking up my J-Box and things still wouldn't program. And we got poking around a little bit and there was a new code, it was communication code. And it turns out that the dealer sold them the wrong TCM.
What vehicle was this on? I'm just curious.
It was a 2020 Ram 2500.
What transmission?
I don't know. I didn't get into it. I just pulled it out and I said, hey, let's give this to your service guy. Have him call the dealer and see if this is the right part number.
No, it's just funny that you say that. I had a Grand Cherokee 2 days ago where they put in a new valve body. It was the wrong part. It was an 8-speed transmission, but I went to program it and I'm like, hey, sorry guys, this is the wrong part. And I even proved it. We unplugged the new transmission and then I plugged in the old valve body. I'm like, yeah, we have it was some park position code.
Yeah, that's what we had too.
Oh, okay.
And the shift selector, we were getting codes with the shift selector.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't communicate with it.
Okay.
Something was wrong.
And I think it had been the dealer. They replaced the shifter, and then that didn't fix it. And then they brought it to this shop, and I looked at it. Okay, it's valve body. But anyways, yeah, that's interesting that you say that because they got sent the wrong part. And we confirmed that, but that's definitely interesting. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the best part about ours was when the service advisor came out and said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, you better check it." "Oh, well, I hope it's not the wrong part. This is the only one they had." I went, yeah, well, maybe the guy who's working at the parts counter at the dealer used to work at the records and thinks they're all the same.
Yeah, yeah. There's a blurry line between doing the right thing and helping people out, and then you getting screwed over too. And
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
unfortunately find myself there a lot. I'm trying to get better at it, but I'm like, yeah, I want to help this shop out or these guys
Sure.
out because I have a working relationship with them. And I mean, a lot of the places I go to, I've gotten to know these guys. And you want to be careful as a business owner, obviously. Like, you can't be best friends with these people, but at the same time, I want to help them out. Like, I'm
Yeah,
there to make their lives easier, but where do I draw that line so that I'm not
yeah.
taking a
Well,
hit?
yeah, no, fair enough. Well, I mean, time management is really what it's all about, right? I mean, my thought is as I go in, I'm sure you have your deal. I mean, right now I charge $1.35 an hour, and it's an hour and a half minimum, and everybody
Mm-hmm.
knows that. That's when I talk to somebody on the phone and they call me up to come in. I say, this is how it goes, whether I'm there 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour and a half minimum. And then after an hour and a half, we're going to talk about where we're at, and then we're going to decide where you want to go. I mean, where it becomes a little more not difficult, where this is where I sometimes, I should say I feel bad. I don't feel bad anymore. I used to joke with my franchisees because because it's always a one side of the table and the other side of the table kind of arrangement, right? Because they always think, oh, yeah, you're the guy, you take 6% of my sales every month, and what do you do? It's always a what have you done for me lately kind of relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's always like that. So I had a saying. I said, listen, say whatever you want to say, because I only have one feeling left, and it's in the car. So, you know what I mean? If
Yeah.
you want to talk about something, let's hash it out. But going back to your question about the shops, uh, where I have difficulty with is when you give them a diagnosis and they go, "Well, yeah, I don't think that's what it is,"
Mm-hmm.
and you go, "Okay, well that's fine, but you still owe me $280 because that's our agreement. This is what
Mm-hmm.
it is, and you can take my diag or not take my diag. That's up to you. But this is what I think it is, right?"
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether you have any kind of guarantee. I mean, with me it's a little bit easier. I mean, I say, look, if I give you bad advice or whatever the case is, don't pay me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's kind of hard sometimes because you're going, so, geez, I really hope I'm right, but
Yeah, I've been there.
yeah, we've all been there. I mean, that's just honesty. It's the way it is. I mean, we're not guessing, but sometimes, as we all know, you get into something and you've done your homework and you've done everything, and you still don't definitively know.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that's one of the beautiful things I find with the Picoscope. With the in-cylinder transducer and stuff like that. I've nailed so many things, as you probably have too, and you can say definitively, no, this is what's happening.
Yep.
This is what's going on. This is what you need to do. And giving the shop advice like that.
Yeah.
But sometimes you get into stuff and you go, yeah, well, I think we got that. I
Uh-huh.
always say, look, if that's not right or something isn't quite right, call me back.
Yep. Yeah.
Call me back.
Same way.
I've made the odd wrong call. Unfortunately, not too many. You feel bad and you feel whatever, but it was the best call you could have made at the time with the information that you had. That's the way I looked at it. And I mean, I certainly offered I said to the guys, hey, listen, you can't send that back. I'll buy it. Don't worry about
Mm-hmm.
it. And I have not yet had a shop take me up on it. They go, no. You do enough for us. You help us out or whatever the case is. And the way they look at it too, I think many shops look at it as well. We would have made that call and replaced that and probably three other things by now.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So from that point of view, you still are providing a service, but yeah, it's always hard. It's such a balance. I found in my shop when I was running my first shop that I had to end up, instead of eating lunch with the guys every day, I actually would let them eat their lunch on their own. I would grab my lunch and I would go up the front and I would enter invoices and make up bills for customers and get caught up on that kind of stuff. And it's not that I didn't want to be one of the guys. It's just that there had to be a definitive line between being one of the guys and being the boss.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, you're setting yourself up for not being taken advantage of, but not being taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real pitfall. That's a lot of people do. They want to be friends with them, but that ruins the relationship.
I found the exact same thing with teaching too. And our program, the way it was structured, was you spent 4 6-hour days with these students for an entire year, 2 semesters, and you really do get to know these students very well. And I mean, they're into this stuff, I'm into this stuff. Of course, we're building relationships and stuff, but I had to make that barrier because you can't be best friends with them, especially as like a teacher when you're giving them grades and things like that. Like it just that like you say, you're setting yourself up to be in a bad spot, to not to be taken advantage of, but it makes it really tough if you're like, oh, this is my buddy,
What makes it tough on you?
Yeah,
it's not tough on them. It's not tough on them because it's easy for them to go, oh well, you're the guy who runs the place, you're the guy that you're doing this, you're doing that, or you've got this, or you've got that, and I'm going, yeah, but what you don't understand, or well, when you franchise, but certainly in the shop business, even more so because you're on such a tight line with paying the bills and whatever the case is, and I mean, hey, there were times when my guys made more money than I did, right? But they don't see that, they don't appreciate that, they don't understand that every single day, there's a cost of putting that key in the door, and turning the lights on, and there's a risk. You're sticking your neck out every single day. And there's a level of stress to that. The way I look at it is, hey, if you're doing that, then you deserve to be rewarded for it. But not everybody sees it that
way. Right. Well, so you're doing mobile programming and stuff, and then you came to the class that we held here in Minnesota in June.
Yeah, I did.
And programming, board level stuff. How's that stuff going for you? Doing more of that recently?
I'm doing more of it. Yeah, I'm doing a little more. I've had some help. I've got great support group with the Polycon guys, and Kevin Sutter has been incredibly helpful. He's really done over and above to try and help me, and I really appreciate that. But actually, what started this whole thing was back in March. I got a call to a shop, and it was 2014 Grand Cherokee, and needed an RF hub, and apparently on, as we know, intergalactic back orders.
Mm-hmm.
And the poor lady, I mean, the thing only had like 100K, so 60,000 miles on it, really great shape. And she dragged it out of the dealer to this shop because the dealer told her that the car was scrapped.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I mean, the poor lady, I felt bad for her, but she had to buy another car to get to work.
Wow.
So we thought, you know what, this is BS. Like there's got to be a way around this. This just doesn't make sense to me. Understanding, like I said, I have an electronics background, but I'm not a computer guy. So when I started doing a bit more reading, and I went, there's got to be a way to deal with this. And then I saw IO Terminal, and then I saw a post by Mike Christopherson. He mentioned something about IO, and I think it was the DN network. And I went, okay, this makes sense. I got to get into this because, it's this. I'm thinking this is the thin end of the wedge, with where we're headed, and I'm starting to get more and more calls on this stuff. So what I'm telling everybody I know is, if you get a module or we change the module, whatever the case is, I want it.
Yep.
Give it to me. Like give me everything you've got. A friend of mine works for a Chrysler dealer, like in northern Alberta, like way the hell up there. And every 2 or 3 months, I get a box, that has half a dozen, crapped out modules that they've changed. Now they're a little different from the dealer network down here because they work on even older stuff where they are because they're in such a small community. It's so isolated. It's not like there's 15 shops to go to. When stuff like that comes in, it goes to the dealer. It doesn't go to the small shop. So he's able to get that stuff. And then my son actually is a dealer tech for GM. So he's just started to get me the odd thing here and there too.
Nice.
Just trying to learn, right? Just trying to learn. I mean, I did learn a really good saying from Kevin, actually, when we were at the e-Promicon thing. He said, listen, don't ever tell anybody that you can fix it. Tell them that you will attempt that. We will attempt to do that. And I think that's true. And how I explained it to the shops, I said, well, yeah, we can attempt to do that. We'll see what well, you can't fix it. I said, well, hey, listen, we'll try.
Yeah.
But what's the worst case? It's already broken.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's what I get a lot with the used modules. So much of the time they'll ask me, can I put a used this and that? I'm like, I don't know. I've never tried that before. So I think that's the best way to answer is it's like, we'll attempt it.
Yeah, we'll attempt it. We'll give it a try. I mean, I've certainly, with the various groups and with what I learned, for those couple of days, to me, the soldering stuff and that, I mean, I was already fairly adept at that. So some of the techniques were new though. Like I'd never used a hot air station before.
Okay.
I quickly realized how much stuff I could wreck really quickly with that and cause all kinds of other trouble.
How tiny those little resistors are on the board.
Those caps and stuff, and I'm going, oh man, wow, this is such a long way from where I started. Dealing with vacuum tubes and resistors the size of the thumb. But I find it challenging. I really like it. Like, people say, well, why are you doing this? For me, it's to keep my brain active.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of so many people when they retire. I retired too early, really, for me. I mean, mentally and physically, I retired too early. Like I'm 62 now. I figured I got some racetrack left. I have a friend who does mostly programming and does some diag and still does some teaching actually for CarQuest. And he's 71. Okay. I cloned a BCM for him this morning.
Nice.
To help him out because he's starting to realize in his marketplace that, he's getting, once again, the module shortage, stuff we can't get new's not available. What's the solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm starting to run into actually mostly with work vehicles, like Chevy, Ford, and Dodge pickup trucks. People got these things, and they're not new trucks, but they're 10 years old or 12 years old. They still got some life left in them, and they're getting modules are going, and the trucks are being sidelined. And the guy got his truck. It's a special welder's truck or it's a delivery, whatever the case. They've got to kit it out with a specific body for what they're doing, and to turn around and take that and slam it on a new chassis. The cost is just, I'm not going to say it's astronomical, but it doesn't make sense. So to try and keep this thing on the road, and then, when I get into, one of my sisters is a real greenie, tree hugger greenie.
Okay.
And I say to her, she says, well, those vehicles aren't as efficient. I said, but hang on a minute. Is it more environmentally beneficial, friendly, whatever wording you want to use, to keep a vehicle that's already manufactured on the road? Or is it better to scrap that thing and make a new one?
Right.
To me, I think it's environmentally better to keep the old one on the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and where does the scrap from that vehicle necessarily go? I don't know. Is that actually going to get recycled, or is it going to go sit in a landfill somewhere?
Well, you can.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, look at here for years, I don't know, about recycling where you are, but up here, we've been recycling forever and a day. Every household, splits their stuff. I mean, we've been doing that for 25 years, coming on 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, many municipalities now no longer take styrofoam because they've realized that they can't actually do anything with styrofoam except throw it in a furnace and turn it into fuel.
Okay.
And send it up a smokestack. There's actually no product that they can turn around with either that white beaded styrofoam or the styrofoam containers, whatever the case may be. They can't actually turn that into a product. It's not like a hard plastic, a number 2 plastic or whatever it is that they grind it up and make a new milk jug. They can't do that with styrofoam. So luckily, there's not a lot of those materials in cars, except for interior materials. But what happens to that stuff?
Yeah.
It's maybe a cotton, maybe it's an oil-based product, and the foam that's in the seat. Well, guess what? We can't do jack shit with that. So it's going to go into a landfill.
Yep.
How can that be a good idea?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I'm thinking about it now that we're talking about up north. This is actually in Alaska. So I had a local customer who some family member of his lived, or maybe it was just worked, but they were way up in Alaska, like one of those places where you got to fly up to Alaska in a plane and then you get on a prop plane and you fly another however far north to this little town that has, almost no connection to the outside world. And there was a Chevy truck that I think it was the PCM went out on it or whatever, and they had no means of getting this thing, programmed to the vehicle and they're like, this vehicle's basically down and useless, and we can't. It's not like they can tow it somewhere, right? It's like, what do we do with this thing? And so I had them mail me the PCM, and we deleted I'm sorry, he bought a PCM that he was going to mail up there, a replacement one, and I deleted the anti-theft out of it with HP tuners. And I told him, I was like, well, this should be plug and play, at least to start the engine now. And it actually worked, and they got the truck going, and so that was kind of cool. But that's the sort of thing, is like, yeah, you can make, an otherwise piece of junk still useful and productive to someone, maybe that they're going to use for their job or to get their kids to school or something like that. So yeah. I think we're doing good stuff by keeping things going.
I agree with you. I think we are. I mean, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys still have the J2534 option for Mercedes?
That is a good question. I think it's there, but they don't play well with it. But I honestly am probably not the person to speak to it. I don't do a ton of Mercedes stuff.
Yeah, no, I don't do any at all. And I'll tell you why. We lost the J2534 option coming up on 2 years ago. Okay. Mercedes pulled it out of Canada. So they said, yeah, no problem. We'll still sell you the factory scan tool and so on. So
the $30,000.
A friend of mine has one, $39,000 he paid for it, $39 Canadian. And you know what? The sub's not bad. It's only $9,800 a year. So, but the friend of mine who owns it, but he does 2 or 3, 4 Mercedes a day, right?
Okay, then it makes sense.
Yeah. He's in the marketplace and he does tons of Mercedes, lots of BMW. He's not a big fan of the BMW. He'd rather do the Mercedes. But with the factory tool, he can do what he needs to do. But I mean, going back to what we were just talking about people not having their vehicles. So, you take your Sprinter van into a shop because it needs a knock sensor or whatever it needs. Pick a sensor. It's going to need one at least. So, and then when you put it in, then it's got to be programmed. It's got to be set up for the vehicle. So then, what we're finding is the clients are driving the vehicle with their 50 kilometers they have left before it derates, getting it to the dealer. And then the dealer says, yeah, no problem. Yeah, we'll get to that. And the truck sits there for a week and a half or 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, I guess that's just the game they play. But I'm going, man, if I owned one of those things, all I'd be thinking about that entire time is, I'm never buying another one of these things.
Yeah, you're not the first person to say almost that exact same thing to me, with the Sprinter vans that'll shut down once you run out of DEF fluid, and that they have so many issues with that system. They're like, we can't afford to run these as our service vehicles because some companies are losing thousands or tens of thousands of dollars a day when they have those trucks off the road.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the great things about fleet work is they want them done.
Mm-hmm,
It's not necessarily always how much is it. Is it done yet?
Yeah, when can we get it done? Yep.
When can we get it back? I actually realized that we opened a shop in Toronto, and one day a Land Rover came in, Discovery guy came in with a Discovery, and I'm going on, right? But it was just simple maintenance. Guy came in for an oil change and wanted the brakes checked, so we did the brake check, and it needed brakes front and back, and so I quoted the guy, and I'm kind of guy's first time in. And I'm going, oh man, how am I going to tell this guy it's going to be like $1,900, for all round brakes? And I'm going, well, I'm just going to tell him, right? Yep. Straight up. I told the guy, and it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. He goes, yeah, okay, can I have that by 3? Well, you got any friends with these? But it's like anything, it depends on the market, depends on the person.
Yep. We used to do work for the post office at one of the shops that I worked at, and they were obviously the same way. It's like, those trucks got to go. Like, fix them now. We don't care what it costs. Get them going. And, well, those things were piles of crap, but...
Well, they were. We actually did work for Canada Post, actually, at one point in time. Actually, they almost bankrupted me because they were so bad at paying.
Yeah.
They were just terrible at paying.
My
stop mailing the check.
The shop the shop owner that I worked for at the time said the exact same thing, was that getting money out of them was actually really difficult.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and you'd think the government, they'd just be giving everybody money, but no, apparently they don't. But you know what? But we went through a period with them. It was but a 2-year period where they had decided. They set up. They had a budget number. I think it was like $3,500 per truck.
Okay.
And they wanted the trucks brought in. Then they gave us the inspection form that they wanted us to use. We did the inspections and everything like that. And then we came back with an estimate. And if it was less than $3,500, they said fix it. I mean, we were dealing with these beat up, Dodge B100 conversion vans, boxes on the back of them, slant sixes. We were doing in frames in the things because the compression was off, and 3/4 of them were propane. I mean, it was just an absolute dog's breakfast of a fleet. But it was one of those things. It was money, right? I mean, we were slow. It was during the recession. Everybody was trying to save a buck. Mm-hmm. And this is what it came down to. But like I said, it was just terrible to get paid. Out front of my first shop, there was a bus stop, and I remember this very distinctly from 1990, from that recession. It was in the morning, whatever time it was, 8:30, whatever, and I went to get out the only car that we had booked in for the day. And I went out the front with the keys, and I'm going to hop on the car, and I hear a knock, 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 like somebody knocking on a window. And I look up, and it was the bus had stopped, and it was one of my customers waving to me. He was on the bus. Okay. And I knew that his family had 2 cars. And I kind of went, oh, man. Like, is this what it's come down to? Yeah. This is a guy who has a car, who's actually parked it at home and is taking the bus to work. Yeah. Like, is there any hope for us? That was a pretty depressing day, because I couldn't get that out of my mind. However many years, 40 years, 30 years later, I can still picture that guy, and trying to figure, man, how are we going to survive this? How are we going to get our way through? But we did. As I always said to people that recession, or whatever you want to call it, that taught me how to run a business.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what was your mindset that got you through that period? Because I mean, you never know what's gonna happen. We could end up be going through the same thing
Oh, yeah, we
in the
could be guys
next
do the same
5 to
thing.
10 years.
My thought was, I never said no. If somebody had something, we took it in. If it
Hmm.
was the lawnmower, we took it in. It didn't matter. We didn't care. We're not proud. If I was taught as an apprentice, and it's probably a rather sexist statement, but it's one of the reasons why I'm probably not out the business front these days, that if a man made it, a man can fix it.
Hmm.
That's what I was always told, right? I came up with some pretty rough and tumble guys, but it was one of those things. Hey, whatever it was, we'll do it. I don't care what it is. If it's a Rolls Royce, if it's a Honda Civic, I don't care. Whatever it is, if it's got wheels, it's got an engine, and it rolls, bring it in.
Hmm.
We'll look at it. And I think that's what you have to do. And sometimes as I said, I took at one point in time, I had a couple, 3 or 4 snow plowing contracts.
Sure.
That I would go out after the shop closed and I would go clear lots or do whatever. And sometimes I'd have to go during the day. It didn't matter. We weren't that busy anyway. And clear snow just to bring in money.
Hmm.
Sometimes you just have to think outside the box and you have to be willing to do what's required
Hmm.
to make it work. Right. I
Yep.
think, I don't know who, the saying is attributed to Winston Churchill, I believe, but he said, or whoever said it said that it is sometimes insufficient to do your best. You must sometimes do what's required. Right.
Yeah, that's a good saying.
Yeah. You've got to kind of figure out whatever you need to do to keep going. And sometimes it's not fixing cars, unfortunately.
Sure.
Hopefully it's not going to come to that. Hopefully things will straighten out. I mean, one thing I found with that particular recession is that we went into it about 6 months ahead of everybody else. So our business slowed down about 6 months ahead of everyone else's,
Okay.
but we came out of it about a year and a half ahead of everybody else. Like the
You're referring to just the auto industry in general?
Yeah, the automotive, automotive
Okay.
repair. Like I was talking to other shop owners in the area and whatever the case may be, and they were going, yeah, we're slow, things are slowed down, whatever the case is, blah blah blah. Meanwhile, I was talking to other retailers, people who were my customers, the guy who owned the mattress store across the road, who said, no, well, we're doing good, and then all of a sudden, about 6 months later, man, boom, it
Yeah.
spiraled into the ground, and everybody's running around with their heads cut off, and we're going, yeah. Oh, I've been telling you this for 6 months,
Uh-huh.
But then about a year and a half before everybody else, we came out of it and we were busy. I think people had put stuff off for so long that it got to the point where they couldn't afford to buy a new car, and they
Hmm.
realized put stuff off, so they were just bringing stuff in. It was like every day we had bookings, and those couple of years right after that, if we could actually was really good, probably one of our best periods actually running
Okay.
the business was then. So
Yeah, yeah, it's a pendulum. There's ups and downs to it. I mean, I remember when I started in the auto industry as a full-time tech I started in 2006, but I, starting to make some good money. I was getting better at what I was doing. I bought a house. I'm 21 years old, and then that was 2008, and everything crashed down there too. And I was kind of like, I was sweating. I was like, oh, how am I going to pay my bills now? Like, what's going to happen? But for at least the area I was working in, or the community that I was servicing, their vehicles, it really wasn't that bad. If no change at all. Like, people kept fixing their cars because they weren't going out and buying new ones, I think. And we were good. We stayed busy the whole time. So that was really good. And we just didn't seem to get affected as much as I think other areas of the country and other industries
no,
did.
yeah,
Uh,
no, for sure. Well, whenever I was talking to people, people who would come to us who are considering buying one of our franchises or whatever the case is, I had a saying with that. I said, listen, we're not recession proof, but we're recession resistant.
mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, it's personal transportation's here to stay. I mean, the USA or Canada is going to become a nation of bus riders.
Right.
We're just right. It's our communities aren't designed to be that way, right?
Yeah.
They're not designed to. You can't get anywhere without personal transportation. It's just the way it is.
Especially in rural areas.
Oh yeah.
Where I'm at, I mean, it's a big distance between places, and the bus doesn't make sense for things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for where I live, I mean, it's a 20-minute drive to a grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for that where I live. I mean, no, where I lived before it wasn't. You could walk to the grocery store. You just wouldn't do it at night. But it's like anything. It's like, well, here's something. Now, let me get your take on this.
Sure.
A lot of people have been talking. It's such a hot topic these days. They're talking about the electric car.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some fairly strong opinions about it that a lot of people don't agree with. But I'm saying that. But I feel that the electric car is not the solution. I think it's an interim measure until the fuel cell is perfected or brought online to the point that they can turn it around and reduce the emissions with it, and or come up with a more suitable way to power it, either through hydrogen or whatever the case may be. If they can figure out how to make hydrogen efficiently versus how it's done now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the electric car is I think it's what am I trying to say? I think it's BS, quite honestly.
Yeah. So I mean, there's obvious potential, and I think the limitation for electric vehicles that a lot of people aren't willing to accept is that done at a scale where, like, let's say 75-80% of people that are driving have electric cars doesn't make sense for any of the power grids anywhere right now. And okay,
our structure's not ready.
And maybe they figure that out. Okay, we jacked everything up, we can power everything. Where's all that power coming from? That's the next question, right? And so that's all, and those aren't easy things to solve or to make realistic. And so there's going to be those limitations, and then the battery technology and stuff like that. So I personally think, in the meantime, that the hybrid model is the way that things are going to go, right? Gas and electric together makes a lot more sense. And
the plug-in electric is a pipe dream.
Yeah, and especially when you mentioned like 40 below weather, right? Not all the country gets to experience that, but we do, and that's going to just be it's going to be hell on electric vehicles that are parked outside in the wintertime trying to charge. But I was in Isaac Rodell's class at ASTE, and he was a battery course that he was teaching. He was talking about, if you look into some of the, like, you read the fine details about some of these laws that they're passing, like in California, about electric vehicles, and like everything has to be electric. It says in there electric or some type of hybrid with an ICE engine. And so I don't think that stuff's going away anytime soon. Now, on the other side of things, like you were mentioning with fuel cell and hydrogen, I honestly don't know much about it. I actually have somebody coming on in the near future who knows more about hydrogen than I do. So hopefully he can answer those questions more intelligently than I can. I've been hearing about hydrogen like since I was in tech school. I remember I'm talking about, it's just water, it comes out of the tailpipe, but nothing ever really happened with it. I don't know if it's just the distribution or what.
Well, and there's a lot of limitation on technology. A good friend of mine worked in research, and they were doing hydrogen and fuel cell research and so on and so on. And actually, they built the first prototype electric caravan for Chrysler.
Okay.
But they worked with their engineers. Actually, it was done in a place in Mississauga, and they were developing some of the very early testing technology for them. Chrysler obviously took it from there and finished the engineering on it. But pardon me, they did a bunch of hydrogen research too. Where they were trying to burn the hydrogen, but that turned to pardon me, the pistons cracked and did all kinds of stuff because of hydrogen embrittlement and so on. But the actual conversion fuel cell to take that, there was a Canadian fuel cell called the Ballard, and I don't know where that's out right now, and it's been around for a long time. But once again, I've been hearing about hydrogen powered vehicles, since I was a kid too, and it's one of these pie in the sky kind of things, but there got to be a solution. There has to be a solution because, as we said earlier, our communities are not designed to not have personal transportation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is. It's the way of the world. Now, and I mean, the other thing too is like where you are is way colder than what I am. Like we're actually quite a bit further south. Where we are in Ontario, we're about as far south as you could get in Canada. We don't get too many minus 40 days, but I mean, we get some -8, -10 days for, and we do get minus 30 days too,
Mm-hmm.
and our traffic, believe it or not, in Toronto, the traffic across the city of Toronto, for commuters, is actually a direct comparison to Los Angeles, and actually in some cases even worse.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that commute is just absolutely brutal. Now it's through COVID, obviously that wasn't the case, but when we get like you guys you get gridlock and you get ice and you get there's only one way across the city and there's 15 accidents and
Oh, yeah.
I mean for people to have a 4-hour commute couple of times a year, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at your electric vehicle there. If you can't charge it at work or whatever the case may be, I mean, if you're an intelligent consumer, one would hope that you would keep everything topped up. Like, don't let your gas tank get down below a quarter because you know what's going to happen. I mean, I'm sure you guys say that to all your clients as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a matter of changing customers' expectations. People's expectations are just so high these days about everything. I don't know. We're going to satisfy people. I really don't.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've said it a lot. I like working with shops rather than the general public anymore. But
Well, I don't deal with the general public anymore. I don't.
Yeah.
And as I said, being the age that I am, I probably it's probably a good thing that I'm no longer running the company that we were, because I did a lot of the business. I was the business face for most of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure by now I would probably be, I'd be all over the internet with crusty old mechanic makes a comment about such and such. I have some organization picketing our head office, or I have my franchisees mad at me.
Yep. Yeah. Just easier to stay in the back of the cars, and I get it a lot. Like I'm in a shop. I don't know if you ever experienced this. I don't work there. I'm contracting for them, essentially. Mm-hmm. But either a customer or a parts vendor or, I don't know, just some random person is like asking me questions like I work there. And I'm like, yeah, sorry. I'm like, hey, I don't work here. I'm in the shop. I'm dressed in some type of uniform. I'm working on the car. And they look at me like, you dickhead. Of course you work here. You just don't want to talk to me.
Yeah. I've had that one. You know what, man? Sir, honestly, I'm just here helping out. I'm sorry, I don't really know that. Perhaps you might talk to so-and-so or whatever the case is. In my first job, we had 6 bays. And it was 6 bays all down the one side, and the way it worked is you could pull in the side lot and you pulled in, and the office was around the front. So we would occasionally, and I'm sure you've had it happen when you were working in a shop, you'd get people walking in the shop.
Oh yeah.
And guy'd be head down working on something or whatever the case is, and they'd start talking to them.
Yep.
The client would start talking to them, to the guy. And my guys, we got to the point where they would not even acknowledge the person. They would point to the office, and they go point to the office.
Yep.
And the person, after 10 or 15 seconds would get the idea. Oh, okay, this guy's not going to talk to me. All right, so they'd walk back out of the bay, around the front of the shop, and in the front door.
Yep.
Right? Your guy wouldn't talk to me. He's not paid to talk to you, sir. But I am. How can I help you?
Yeah. We when I worked at Firestone, we had a guy he didn't stop and talk to the people up front. He just came to the shop. He just pulled right into the bay. Just pulled in, got out of his car. Hey guys, what's up? Like, what are you doing, dude? But it wasn't 6 months later. We had to put up these yellow plastic chains behind the bays, so that would keep people not only from driving but walking back into the shop. But the problem was everyone you had when you pulled a car in, you had to put the yellow chain up behind the car. It was part of the process, and of course, then you have to remember to take the yellow chain off.
Yeah.
And they were plastic for that reason, but there was plenty of yellow chains that got snapped as cars were being backed up.
Yeah. But you know what? But you got to do it. I mean, it's some of the things that happen. It was stuff like that. But
yeah,
you have to do it. I mean, it's just my guys were flat rate because they wanted to be. I offered to put them on salary, but they wanted to be flat rate because they did okay.
Mm-hmm.
But they were not going to waste. I used to always say about my guys, they're good techs. Sometimes, I always did the electrical and I always did that kind of stuff for them because that was my thing anyway. But I was going to say they don't walk around the car twice. They're there to get the job done, and as you and I both know as techs, that's how you get paid, right? You get the job done,
Yep.
get it out as quickly as possible.
Yep.
And done correctly. I'm certain. I don't know what it was like in your shop, but my guys knew that if they were flat rate, but if there was a comeback, that was the first car that they were working on today.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was the deal. If something wasn't right or something wasn't dealt with, you're going to deal with this first. So you're not getting paid for this. And you got to resolve this before you get a paying job.
Yep.
So, I mean, quality wasn't an issue with my guys. It was, and I didn't have a problem with them with overselling. I can honestly say in all my time in this business, I only ever worked with one guy that I wouldn't have said was dishonest, but was borderline a little bit overzealous about things.
Okay.
About not selling extras, but I'd go to him like, okay, let's have another look at those calipers. Really, let's look at the pad wear. Is it even? It's even.
Yeah.
Both sides. I really don't think it needs calipers. You know what I mean? But the kind of dirty little secret in this business, if you will, and I only discuss this with techs. I certainly would never say this out in the public. But to the customer, dishonesty and incompetence looks the exact same.
Yep.
Right? The customer can't tell. So when they say the guy was dishonest, he wasn't. He made a call, but he made the wrong call.
Yep.
Either because he wasn't educated, he doesn't care to be educated, or he just plain guessed, or unfortunately, he didn't do his job and inspect the car properly.
Yeah, it's laziness a lot of the time that brings that on. But yeah, the immediate reaction from the majority of customers is you're trying to screw me over. And you're doing that intentionally.
Well, yeah, and where it was actually, I won't say it was an honest mistake. It was an honest mistake because you didn't know, or it was an honest mistake because, like you said, you were too lazy to actually do your job.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, that shop that I kind of grew up in, if you will, the first day that I worked there, I'll never forget it. The guy said to me, the guy who later became my partner, he said, there's enough honest work out there. You don't have to make nothing.
Right. Yeah. I've always believed that same thing.
Yeah. You know what? And the way I look at it, probably the same way you look at it, is it's the customer's car, their money, it's their decision. Mm-hmm. I'm here to give you advice. I'll give you the best advice I possibly can. And I want to educate you because an educated customer to me is my best customer. Right? So I never minded spending the time with people to try to explain why they wanted to do whatever. And if they still said no, well, that's fine. I respect that. That's their decision. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the one thing that I couldn't, that actually, I needed to kind of get over was, well, I already had it checked by somebody else, and they're going to do it for $40 cheaper. Well, then I guess you better take it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You probably ran into that in your Firestone days, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Especially the area that I was at. That was very common. I was, again, that's where I figured out that my job is a lot easier when I'm not dealing directly with the public all the time, because they have it set up. They're service writers. They deal with the customers, and they'll bring them back, and I'll talk to them and like, yeah, hey, there's your leaking, whatever. But I didn't have to deal a lot with the selling and everything. And prior to that, I did. My first, I would say 6-7 years in the field, I was service writer / tech. So I sold my own work, I ordered the parts, and then I did the work. And while it's a good experience to know what that's like, man, you can be a lot more efficient at your job without doing that side of it. And I think it's a lot less stress, too, when you're just focused on the car. Right?
That's one of the things. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool talking about some of this stuff. I mean, from the business standpoint, I've been fortunate enough to be able to stand back and I the saying says, you don't make the same mistake with your own money twice. Right?
Sure.
So I mean, and that's how I look at with my guys. If we make a mistake, we make a mistake. Just come and tell me, and we'll figure out the way forward, what we're going to do with it, how we're going to fix it. Like, there's no anger, there's no disgust, there's no finger pointing. It just is what it is. We've all been there. We all make mistakes. Believe me, I've made my share. But you have to just be constantly looking for a way forward. And you've got to, sometimes it's a hard decision. Like right now, there's a couple tools I'd like to buy, to add to my arsenal. I know I'm not ready quite yet, and probably my business isn't at that point, but you want to be prepared. But you got to say, it makes sense to hold back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you spend on tools in a year, but I know that this year was a pretty heavy year for me, especially after going to Promicon.
Yeah, it's meeting all these people and making friends in the industry that seem to have increased my spending by quite a bit.
Yeah. Like I think my wife came to me and with everything, including the trip and everything out there. I think I've spent almost $29,000 since June.
Wow.
With trying to dig into this. But I mean, but to me, I look at it once again. It's a move forward. Like I think that the programming business, and specifically getting into the dealing with used modules, is going to be a real market.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
You see it every day, and I mean, and you're into another thing that I haven't gotten into that I'm fascinated to listen to. I really enjoyed your podcast on keys.
Oh, okay.
Because I know you do keys. I know Kevin Sutter does keys.
Yep.
And he encouraged me to get into the key business. I haven't done it yet because I'm not really quite there. And there are a ton of key guys around here. But I've been caught short on a couple of jobs where I've had to drive to the dealer and get a key.
Sure. I bet you, just speaking with you and the amount that I know you, that you would probably be really interested in the leashy stuff. Not even if you didn't necessarily use it. I mean, it's a nice thing to have if you need to make a key from scratch. Like you can decode the lock, but it's one of those finesse things that's actually really frustrating. Like, you want to throw the stupid leashy across the shop. Like, why is this not working? But once you finally get it, you finally like you feel, okay, I can feel that it makes sense now. And then you open the lock and you decode it. It's pretty cool. Just to work through and gain that skill. I bet you'd like that quite a bit. I've actually kind of enjoyed how challenging it's been to learn that stuff.
Yeah, I used to sit on the couch when I was a teenager, just for because I'm probably like most of us, I've kind of got that OCD, can't sit still kind of thing going on.
Sure.
probably like ADHD kind of stuff. Like that's me, right? As most of us are, because I recognize a lot of people who were just like me at the Primacon.
Yep. Yep.
I used to sit on the couch watching TV, whatever, with a padlock and a paper clip and whatever, and just sit there, just working on picking locks and stuff like that, just because it was something I wanted to learn how to do. So yeah, the leashy thing. When I saw that and I heard you talking about it, I thought that looks really cool.
Yeah. It's fun. I mean, it's fun and frustrating. It's pretty cool. But then, yeah, another source of revenue too. I'm going to do an all keys loss tomorrow morning, and yeah, if you're fighting with other locksmiths and stuff, they can drive the or other people in general can just drive the price down. But it's a nice service to add. And for me, it's been, okay, I'm already programming all your stuff. Hey, I do keys too. They'll just call me because they have a working relationship with me and they know I'll get there, I'll take care of them. And the all keys lost have been a good source of revenue because you can.
Yeah, I'm actually shocked as to how often that happens.
Oh, dude, I didn't know until I got into this. And it happens like all the time. How do you lose all your keys to your car? I just don't even understand that. I mean, if I don't have a second key to a car, that's the first thing I'm doing. Is I'm gonna go make another key and maybe a third one, and then I'll put them in two spots. But it's just I don't get it. But it's all the time.
Yeah, I know it really blows me away. Although what I've actually been finding, and I don't know what it is, I don't know whether it's the local guy isn't interested, doesn't have the time, but I get a call from a shop where they purchased the fob or the smart key, whatever, from the locksmith guy, from the lock guy, but he's the one a programmer.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of the locksmiths in particular have limitations is on the automotive programming side. Whereas, and it's not all of them, there are fantastic locksmiths out there that can do all that stuff, but they're great with the locks, the keys, making the keys, cutting them, that sort of stuff. And again, a lot of them can do plenty of the programming, but I have locksmiths in my area who want nothing to do with automotive, period. And I think that's where the limitation lies. I had actually gone to one of the one of the earlier EPROM classes that Mike and Pedro held in Vegas, and there was a couple locksmiths that attended that class, and they were there for that exact reason, because they're like, we get beat up on the programming side of things so often that we can just make the key and then that's it. We can't get it programmed to the vehicle, and we want to learn how to do that stuff. And like when it comes to the European side of things, a lot of the time you're pulling modules and doing the EPROM stuff to get that key added to the vehicle. So it's like a whole nother skill set on top of automotive, on top of keys, that you need to get that stuff done. But it sure is a cool feeling when you can make that stuff happen. I actually like doing the European stuff now, where I'm pulling security modules and stuff.
It's funny you say that, because I actually did my first BMW, came in PCM with, it was an 08 323i. Dealer told the guy that the car was unfixable. It got towed to one of my customers. He called me. We went and looked at it. And the problem actually was that two of the pins had actually disintegrated on the PCM. They were gone completely.
Oh, wow.
They'd rotted right off, like they were missed inside the connector.
Jeez.
So we cleaned the connector up, had a look at it, and went, the connector actually looks okay. It's just the pins on the PCM were toast. So I said, well, get a used PCM and let's see what we can do. So I had purchased Hexproc for another job that ended up was a bit of an expensive lesson. That one was a B-dub with the was a M17.2.5 or whatever. Anyway, it's the one that has the tri-core processor. And I didn't have the software to be able to manage and undo that. I mean, Mike offered to help me, but I said, yeah, you know what? I ended up buying Otis.
Okay.
swallowed Otis, and we were able to do it, got the customer going. So, but I bought Hexprog, and all of a sudden I was rather crestfallen because I bought this thing, and all of a sudden it didn't do the job because I wasn't educated enough. Not the tool's fault, my fault. But the one thing about the Hexprog is that, as you know, it does the CAS modules and the FRM modules and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I was able to get that unit, and I used my 508. Pulled out the long ISN from it. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, I couldn't make the XP 400 talk to the CAS module for whatever reason it wouldn't, but the Hexprog did. So I went and pulled the file out with the Hexprog, loaded it with the info back into the IM 508. It did the file repair, pulled it back out on a key, and then put it back in with the Hexprog.
Nice.
And then we were able to take that to CAS module, went back, and didn't even have to do anything with the keys. It recognized the keys, and boom, the car started and ran. And that was such a good, as you said, that was such a good feeling.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, okay, we can do this. And I was kind of, I was kind of scared of BMWs up to that.
Oh yeah, same here.
I don't have a ton of experience with them, right?
Yeah, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, like, hey, do you want to do some immobilizer work on a BMW? I'd be like, no, I'm good. Send it to somebody at Euroshop or something like that. And now, I mean, honestly, I'd probably rather do BMW first out of all of the European vehicles. But yeah, okay. And that's the thing is like just getting into something and figuring out, oh, I can figure this out. Oh, this isn't that bad, or I just need to educate myself, like you say, and then, this is just more nuts and bolts. Like you were saying at the beginning, it's all.
Well, you know what? I'm finding, obviously the finding that the problem I have right now, obviously, I need a couple more tools, to give me more coverage, but the limitation right now is me. I'm the limitation. The education that I have and the, I've learned a ton. As I said, that Epromicon class was great to meet all the people and pick up the stuff. But the thing that I really wanted to go there to pick up and I got what I needed was what do I actually need to do this job? Because the tools that were there, other than the Autel, the IM508, I had never seen any of those other tools before. Right. I had no clue, not an inkling of what it was. Yep. Like I ordered an AR-32. I'm waiting for it to arrive. Nice. I'm looking at getting it, but I think that'll give me some comfort. It's such a cool tool. But you look at some of the other stuff, VVDI tools and so on. It's like anything, as they said, like there's no scan tool that does it all.
Right.
There just isn't, and there can't be. It would be impossible to be able to do that, right?
Yeah, there's too much variety out there and stuff. And you kind of have to, make decisions in order to invest your money in stuff that's actually going to be returned for you. And sometimes you hit it big, and other times you spend a lot of money. And I'm looking at a box on my floor that I spent a lot of money on, and I still have not opened that box yet.
Yeah. Well, you see, that's what I was saying with the Hexprog. I was bouncing back and forth between that. I forget the other tool I was considering getting, but I looked at what the capabilities of that tool was, and I thought, you know what? Well, I'm looking at the marketplace, look at the calls I'm getting. Yeah, that makes actual sense. Now I haven't ponied up, and I did the Volkswagen on the 30-day. I haven't coughed up the other $1,500 because that's almost $2,400 Canadian right now to get the full subscription. But with the other stuff that I can use it for, I've already paid for my initial investment, so I'm okay there. Nice. But after it failed on that Volkswagen, I'm going, oh man, I just blew $900.
Yeah.
That car still doesn't start. That's the oh man, what am I doing? I really know what I'm doing. Okay. And you really start to doubt yourself, and then you get a win, and then all of a sudden you're kind of back in the game again, right?
Yeah. What's that next $900 tool I'm buying?
Bingo, exactly. But that's the thing. I mean, you don't want to say no But then again, you want to cough up $800 or $900 for a tool that you may only use once. That's always the balance, right? And I think you and Matt Fonslow were talking about the exact same thing. I think I was listening to your, and you guys were saying the exact same thing. Like I can, as Mike Christopherson said, he said, if I could get away with 3 tools, you think I'd be driving this Sprinter?
Yeah, exactly.
Like I can only imagine the amount of tools that Pedro has.
Oh yeah. Some of these guys. Oh, Kevin.
Or Kevin. I mean, Kevin, I didn't want to point the finger at Kevin, but I mean, but the thing with Kevin is that, I mean, obviously he's got, his business, which is divided up between his actual shop business and the stuff he does and the other. And I mean, the guy's amazing. He's so talented.
Yeah.
You look at some of the stuff that he does and you go, wow, okay. Like, I knew of Kevin before I met him at Promicon through another guy I know that does cluster repairs.
Okay.
And he runs a cluster repair business, but he's also an instructor at the local community college, an automotive instructor. So I knew him through that. And he, I'd heard about Kevin before I actually met him. And he said, yeah, this Kevin guy, he's got a crazy amount of stuff and he does all this, blah, blah, blah. And he said, if I get a question, I always call him. But Kevin's invested, like he's in it. This is his thing. This is his group, right?
Mm-hmm.
But but I can think of, oh man, the amount of money, like when he told me he went out and, because Kess, of course, Kess and K-Tag changed to Kess 3. And he said, yeah. So I just went and bought one. And I said, oh, what'd you spend on that? And he told me, and I kind of went, big blow. And I went, but for him, it makes sense.
Yes.
Because his business is to that point where it can support that. And God bless him. Good for him. That's awesome. I think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But,
you have to look at what you're doing, what you're going to be.
What your market is.
Take on. What your market is. For me, for instance, like buying Zentry for Mercedes would be it wouldn't make sense at all because I get 1-2 calls on Mercedes every 6 months.
That's the same.
That's just not my market. So I have no interest in pursuing that. But for whatever reason, I seem to get a lot of BMWs, and so that stuff makes a lot more sense. Volkswagens, I get a ton of calls on those, so I bought Otis, and it's paid for itself. I think it's important as a business owner, or I mean, you could even do it as a tech too, right? Like, what tool am I buying off the tool truck this week? Well, what am I seeing in my bays? Make some notes. Like, I find it's really helpful to write some of this stuff down to document it. Like, oh, I got 4 calls for this particular transmission. I guess I just jotted this down somewhere. Okay, it makes sense to go look for this tool. And having that just written down somewhere on an even piece of paper and say, oh, okay, Mitsubishi CVT. Okay, I got another call for that. Okay, I guess I got to start looking into this tool. And keeping track of that stuff. That's important because it's tough to keep it all in your head. But actually having it written down, then you can do some math too. Like, okay, I got 4 calls on this, tool's X amount of dollars. Okay, all right, it makes sense.
Well, you're going to get an ROI, right?
Yeah.
Or you're at least going to get your investment back.
Yes, you would hope so.
No, absolutely. Like, you'd at least like to get the price of admission back. I mean, the way I look at it too is like my year end's coming out, so I'll sit down with my year's invoices, and I've got to go through and see, how many GMs did I do? How many Fords did I do? What am I going to buy? Does it make sense for me now to buy a year subscription for GM? Did I do it? That makes sense, because when I started this business, it really started at the very beginning of COVID. So, I mean, I couldn't even go door knocking. Most of my business right now is word of mouth. Probably you probably went through a very similar thing, right? Mm-hmm. So, I'm not quite there yet. So you mentioned Otis. Just a quick question. Let me ask you. So you've installed version 10.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I can see the look on your face. So I installed version 10, and went to a vehicle, and plunked down the $190 for the 1 week subscription, because once again, I don't have a lot of VW business. So did that, started doing the test plan, and then I said, hang on a minute. When I used it with 9, where's the service info? Where's the service info at? Where's that at? So I phoned help, and I said, hey, there seems to be a problem with my download. I didn't get the service info. And the guy said to me flat out, he said, no, it's not included anymore.
Yep.
I said, what do you mean? Well, you guys were never really even supposed to have that. He said that to me. I went, are you kidding me? He said, nah. I said, that was a programming problem, and they just never addressed it, but we addressed it in version 10. I said, is there anyone who can go back to 9? No, sir.
The other thing that happened when it went to 10 is I was using my iScan as it emulates VAS 6154, which is Volkswagen's factory interface. And so it eliminates any of the key cycle problems that you run into with a JBox doing that. And for anybody looking, you can't find a VAS 6154 right now unless it's used, but they're galactic backorder, like a lot of stuff right now. So, but when they went to 10, iScan no longer works as a pass-through at all. And I guess I haven't checked in the last couple of weeks, but last time I did check, they still didn't have a fix for it. And I had paid money, obviously for the iScan, which has other uses, but I paid money to iScan, to activate the Volkswagen emulator. And so that I was bummed out about too. So I've been getting by with the JBox, but there are some definite limitations there. So that's what we fight with all this stuff, right? Is a constant upgrade and changing and this and that. And I think it's why it's tough, if not impossible, for your average shop to keep up with all of it, because it's my full-time gig and I struggle to keep up with it a lot of the time. Somebody that's only pulling this out every 6 months to try to get it to work on a car would be just a disaster.
Absolutely. You know what? And I've had, and I'm sure you've had clients too. And I had a shop that I've done a lot of work for. They're really good guys, and they're sharp. I mean, it's not that they don't have the ability to do this; they do. And they're younger guys, so their brains would probably absorb far more than I could, or mine will at this point in time. But they say to me, "Well, what do you think about getting in a flash?" I said, "Hey, listen, if you're thinking about getting into this, I'll give you some advice. I'll tell you what to buy and what to do." I said, "No, at the end, it really is neither here nor there for me. You're one customer. I'm happy to try and help you." I said, "But look at how often you call me, right? You call me 3 times a year. Do you want to invest, $3,800 in a Cardac 3 Plus a laptop plus the subscription, and then every time you go and use it every 4 months?" Yeah. It's, TechLine Connect is going to be eight versions behind.
Yeah.
Or Ford is going to be what? And you're going to spend, 45 minutes to 2 hours getting the PC ready to be able to do the job. Then you got to buy the subscription and. Wouldn't you rather be doing 2 brake jobs in that time? Does it make financial sense for you to do that? I understand the prime thing. I understand being able to do it. I get that. I said, you're smart guys. You can do this. If I can do it, you can definitely do it. I'm not brilliant, but at the end of the day, does it make sense? What's your ROI? What are you going to get that money back? Probably not. And the frustration level. I know how frustrated I get sometimes, and I've got 3 years into this now. And I mean, you're probably the same way.
Yep.
Yep. You hook up and go, what do you mean? In my case, FJDS needs another update. It almost looks like they need another update every month.
Right. Oh, TechLine Connect has just been brutal. Just brutal. I couldn't imagine trying to use that with no prior reference, or at least just an understanding going into it that it's probably going to crash a couple times before it fires up. If that was my first time programming something, maybe I would be so concerned to use that program to try to get a module functional because it would shut off 4 times and before I could even get into something. It's so
well. This may not make you feel any better. It certainly didn't me. But my son has been a dealer tech for just over a year, and he's a GM dealer tech. He's one of their guys with more experience. And when I tell him about TechLine Connect, he just rolls his eyes because they have the exact same problems.
Yeah, I've heard that same thing.
Yeah, like the tech next to him, she does a lot of the programming and that kind of stuff. He said the number of modules that she has bricked because TechLine has crashed during what they're doing. And I mean, and they're flat rate. She just throws up her hands like this. She just takes it back to parts and lays it on the counter and they give her another one.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't make you feel any better, right? But I mean, what does that say about the how much actual testing that they're doing?
Right.
I joked with somebody the other day. I said, I think that the GM has hired the same company that Ford hires to write their software. Because that's almost the way it seemed to be going.
Yeah.
To me, it was the best software. I mean, Ford was rock solid, and then it started to go sideways.
SBS 1 was lights out. I guess you can still get that if you call service or tech help or whatever for.
They'll open it up for you.
Yeah.
And actually, they said they'll open it up for you for a day. But the last time they opened it up for me, I think I had it for 3 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah, it was handy. I actually ended up buying off a shop who got frustrated with programming like 5 or 8 years ago. I actually picked up a Blue Streak iFlash off.
Okay.
Yeah, for next to nothing, and I'm going to try it. Well, I did try it. I used it on Monday on an 07 Equinox.
Okay.
Because I had read a whole bunch of stuff especially with the 3 Plus, and what people were saying, and I don't know whether it's true because I haven't had it happen, but they said that it would crash with TechLine with SPS2 because the box was actually too fast, the transfer rate. At least that was the theory. I don't know whether that's actually the case or not, or whether it's a problem with TechLine, because as you said, you get SPS1 and you're good to go. So I used that. I'm going to try the slower J-Box and see if that gets around the problem.
Okay.
I've heard about people using that like with the Ford First Series box and the earlier GM box.
Yeah.
If you have, they use it and it seems to solve the issue. I don't know whether that's true.
Well,
I don't know.
I know for some of the Class 2 stuff, that was definitely the case, is if you were trying to use an MDI2, their newest interface with a old single-wire Class 2, your likelihood of breaking something is much more. I got set up with an old XP laptop and TIS 2000 and a Tech 2 for that old stuff, and I mean, it's only good up until 07, but that is where it's at for programming that stuff. It's very, very stable, I guess is the best way to put it. It just works.
Well, XP was rock solid.
Yeah.
I was a huge XP fan. And, I actually didn't even mind Windows 7. 7, once I wrapped my head around some of the security issues with 7. But when 10 came along with the extra level of security and stuff like that, I tapped out. I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm done learning about this stuff.
Yeah.
When my kids were younger, with Windows 98, I learned Windows stuff out of self-defense because my kids were always breaking stuff. Dad, this doesn't work. Oh, this doesn't work. So I learned and I get into it. And then, then when we get into XP and so on, I loved XP. But yeah, like your setup, I don't have a Tech 2, mostly because I don't work on a lot of stuff that old, right?
Sure.
And I do have a friend I can borrow one from if I really need it. They worked at a Saab Saturn dealer.
Oh, okay.
Before they got downsized, and they with a couple of Tech 2s from the dealer as a parting gift. So I don't ask any questions. I say, can I borrow it?
Sure.
But once again, there you go to equipment.
Yeah.
what do you buy? What do you have? What have you got? So you'd love to have it all, but it's almost impossible. To be like a guy like me. It just doesn't make sense to have that much gear.
Right. You're gonna be buying certain things if you're trying to get to that point. You're gonna buy certain things just to have them, not to be profitable with them, and then you have to decide like, is this where I want to spend my money, or do I want to have a boat?
Exactly. You know what I mean? Hey, if it's something you're going to get a return on, I'd say buy it. But you got to figure it. When I look at my buddy Larry, at 71, still doing this stuff, and he's been doing this stuff he's been doing it for 20 years, so he has a lot of stuff. But for me, I figured, hey, maybe if I can do this and for the next, if I can do it for 10 more years, then I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll invest in a few more pieces of equipment, but I think we got some legs with this thing. I really do. Like, I think, Pedro and Mike and that were really made the right call.
Yeah.
Into kind of digging into this section of the business.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And the thing is, people say, they're training guys, but I mean, the market is so big. It's so large that, I mean, they could probably train another couple thousand guys. It's not going to put a dent in anybody's business.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Fonslow, and I don't know for sure the number of people that attended Pedro's webinar recently for the Subaru one, but when we had talked, it was somewhere around 100 people or so, and that's great turnout for his class. But if you think about it, that's only 2 people per state that can perform that job, right? And so on the big scale of things, and I mean that was just the U.S., right? Not even including Canada or something like that. Yeah, you're right. The market is very big, and of course, anything like that can become saturated. But I don't know. Some of the stuff's definitely challenging enough to keep. That you have to invest some time to build things, some skills to be able to do it. But then there's a paywall to a lot of the stuff too, with all the tooling that we're referencing here too. So then it's like, okay, I'm going to ante up, and then I'm going to be that guy, and I'm going to go out there and seek out these jobs and take on this sort of stuff. And I mean, it's kind of what I've been doing, and it's so far it's working out for me.
Yeah, well, and I think you said the addition of the keys really helped. Because I think the keys, once you're into it, when you've got what you need. I mean, to me, I think that the price of admission is probably about 20. You could probably get into it for about $2,800. Mm-hmm. I think it's somewhere around there. I think by the time you buy, an X-Horse, you buy one of their machines, and you buy one of their readers, whatever the case may be, work together, right? Tell me if you think I'm wrong. I'm thinking that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, you can get a Dolphin and Key Tool Max for about that, and then it's just the keys, and it's like everything else. It's kind of endless once you start looking at it. And I'm like, I want to stock keys, and I'm like, okay, how much money do I drop here to have these things on the ready? Because if I have one ready, it's such an easy sell. I'm at a shop. Oh, you need another key? I got one in the van. But how many thousands of dollars do I want to spend to have key stock?
That's the one I don't know. So, you can see the hardware is real easy, but for me, I'm thinking, what do I want to buy? What do I want to put in for inventory?
Yeah,
I'm sure you could easily match the hardware with inventory, really
easily. Yeah, I started with just Ford stuff because that's why I even got into keys. It's because a lot of them need that second key to complete the programming. That was the whole reason I started with it. And then the Chrysler Wind modules, sometimes you can unlock them, but they need another key. And then, hey, I can sell you a key. And then everybody's asking about keys, and okay, let's get these other ones. And
yeah. What I run into with the Wind modules is that you get the module, you get the program, and everything's cool, and it will work with the key that came with the Wind module, mm-hmm. but you can't get the original key to work.
Yep. It's so Keith Perkins has something on that, and I don't recall the order. It's something to do with the PCM replaced function through the scan tool, and there is a way that you can get around that. So I don't know, maybe he has a video or on his website or something like that. There is a way you can get around that. If I run into that, I just sell him a new key. But there's also a way that you can unlock the fobs with the VVDI stuff, but you got to solder to the circuit board and stuff, and so that's some work.
Actually, the hex plug does some of those too.
Oh, does it? Okay.
I think the VVDI is probably more capable tool. It's certainly geared more towards that.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say X-Horse does key stuff like nobody else. From what I have experienced, it's quite the product.
Wicked cool. Anyway, well, keep doing what you're doing, man. It's working for you. The number of people that I've actually turned on to your podcast, I said, hey, you're listening to this guy, you need to be listening to this guy. This is a good guy to listen to. And I'm telling people, stop listening to the radio. Put this guy on when you're driving to work. Listen to what it is. Now, does Matt Fonzo, does he have something?
Yes, he does. It's Diagnosing the Aftermarket is the name of the show, and it's on all the same podcast apps.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, definitely check out his show. He covers a wide range of stuff. It's all tying back to automotive and this industry, but he's going into things like, substance abuse and marriage, divorce, all kinds of, like, he's covering a wide range, and it's a really good show. So definitely.
Yeah, you talk about substance abuse. So I'll leave you with this thought. So I'm sure you worked with, I don't know whether you worked with guys like this, but when I talk about a rough and tumble crowd, most of the guys that I worked with back in the early days when I was, barely shaving, all those guys had a bottle in their box. They had a bottle of rye or bourbon or whatever the case is in one of the drawers in their box. And when I went to this one shop, before I went to the shop where I ended up with the two business partners, I figured that I'd become a trusted employee when I got my own key to the paper towel container in the bathroom, because that's where the Mickey of rum was hidden. And there were always a couple of cups, a couple of plastic cups in the medicine cabinet. When the guy would go in there and have a cigarette, in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, and have a shot of rum or whatever the case, whatever was in the container. You talk about substance abuse. I mean, It's been around forever.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and for whatever reason, a lot of people in our industry seem to be, wrapped up with that. Yeah, you and me both have known lots of people. But yeah, that was some of the, topics that he's broaching there on his show, which has been really, good to talk about that sort of stuff, because otherwise nobody does.
No, absolutely. You know what? And when I, tell my son about that, he's been in tech for 12 years, right? And he looks at me and goes, "What?" I said, but I mean, guys that, I said, you've worked with guys in your own shop that, come in on Monday morning, and they're still, they're on the tail end of an acid trip.
Mm-hmm.
I said, and darn well that guy's head's not in the game.
Right.
He's grabbing a set of keys and taking a customer's car for a test drive, and I'm going, yeah, that can't be good.
Right.
Anyway,
cool,
as all, I'm enjoying modding your page. I hope I'm doing an okay job for you.
No, I appreciate you doing that for sure.
Yeah, but we're certainly getting, and the welcome feature kind of popped out. I didn't come up with that, just so you know.
Okay.
Facebook came up with that.
Oh.
The welcome, it actually collects the names.
Oh,
and
okay.
Sends me said you have, and when it gets 2 or 3, I forget how many hours it goes. And if you get compiles 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or whatever, it says you have new members to welcome. And I went, well, let's welcome those people. So
Nice. I like it.
Facebook did that. I didn't do that, just so you know.
Okay, okay. Well, it's appreciated either way. So, and I appreciate you spending 2 hours with me tonight. That flew by.
Well, yeah,
So,
I hope it didn't take up too much of your time. I hope you'll
no,
get something useful out of it, and hope it doesn't sound too much like gibberish.
no,
Well,
I
on
enjoyed
the
it.
other group that I mod with is the Canadian Mechanics Hangout, and it's a national page in Canada. You have to be a tech of some description in
Okay.
motive power to join. As you know, so we've got everything from automotive to aircraft to farm equipment guys, whatever the case is. But they all call me Grandpa.
Okay.
They used to call me Dad. Now they just call me Grandpa. It's no insult. Anyway, I hope it was of some use. And once again, I appreciate what you're doing. It's very helpful for me. It's been very helpful for me to listen to some of your stuff and go, okay, so I'm not really out to lunch. Okay, all right, that's cool.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jamie. I appreciate
No
it.
problem. You take care, and I'll talk to you in due course, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Big thank you to Jamie for spending a couple hours with me. Really appreciated that. Super cool guy. It's really an honor to get to talk to people who have so much experience in the field and all the really intelligent people I have on the podcast. It's really cool. I feel really lucky to be able to do that. So I'm going to keep doing it. Also like to thank everybody for listening and the feedback I've been getting about the show. It's fantastic. Keep it up. Love it. But with that all the way, let's get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.